your local radio station.
Senedd Talk Radio.
It's Friday, May the 7th. Welcome along to our coverage of the Senedd Elections 2021. Joining me in the studio today is Gwenoro Jones, former MP for Carmarthenshire and our political analyst. We'll be bringing you all the results as they come in, along with interviews with the candidates involved in the election process.
Your stories, your platform. This is Senedd Talk Radio.
Welcome along. My name's Alan Evans. This is Senedd Talk Radio. Welcome back to the studio with me. Still is Gwenoro Jones. You may be looking at your newspapers and news sites tomorrow and seeing another victory for Welsh Labour, and you can bet that the Welsh media will be packed with photos and reports. At Gwenoro, the claim is that the Welsh media is in crisis, no plurality, the dominance of the BBC, the lack of Welsh language content. Is the Welsh media robust enough to hold politicians to account? What do you think?
Before I come to that, just let me say, the Vale of Clwyd is into a recount.
All right.
That means a Labour seat could be in danger to the Tories. It was one of the Tories' target seats, the Vale of Clwyd. There's now a recount going on at the moment in the Vale of Clwyd, which rather thinks to me that the Tories might well be on the way to winning it. Anyway, the Welsh media, yes. It's only about 2 years I've been into this with you, as you know, and I've been very impressed with the setup you have and the way the Welsh news is covered and its content. And it's in such a way that is unique. And the uniqueness is that you cover the 5 Senedd regions, and the quality and the amount of news that comes within those 5 regions is quite phenomenal, really. And on top of that, there is the Welsh language dimension. Now, I can't speak with certainty, but I doubt, other than Golwg 360, I doubt if anyone else gives as much coverage to Welsh daily Welsh language news as we do. And I think that is something the Senedd and the new Welsh government, whichever complexion, coalition or Labour on its own, they will have to pay attention to the future of the Welsh media. And I don't mean by that big Welsh media. I mean the Welsh media at local and regional level right across Wales, because that is where the future is. It is future in terms of online. It is future in terms of hyper-local news. That is what creates the interest, and that is what people yearn for. They get their main news from BBC One, Sky, ITV, whatever. Local papers, as we know, for 20 years have been in decline, and it's gone worse during the COVID, in fact. You know, I remember the days when in Carmarthen, when I was an MP and candidate, 20,000 was the circulation of the Carmarthen Journal, 20,000 was the circulation of the Carmarthen Times, about 14,000 the South Wales Guardian. The Tyneside was about 6,000. Now, if you were to look at the figures now in those areas, they've collapsed. In fact, 1 or 2 of the papers are no longer going. So therefore, yes, the Welsh Government needs to assess what is the future of Welsh media. Not the media, Welsh media. Because the dominance is, be it the Western Mail, be it the other big Evening Post, Daily Post, BBC Wales, ITV Wales, Radio Cymru. Yes, that is a component of the Welsh media, but by far the most important thing to try and develop from a Senedd point of view and also from a local community point of view is that local concentration. Now, I think you said before about the various hubs, 4 or 5 hubs in Wales. That's got a role, that's got a future. apparently the Welsh Government is thinking along the lines of putting in some £500,000 to £1 million a year into a fund to develop the Welsh media. But it sadly needs it, because we're getting far too much news that is London-centric, let alone Cardiff-centric. 70-80% of the Welsh news comes from London. And that is a problem. And that is a problem for Welsh democracy. It's a problem for the Senedd publicity. If you were to think of it, how often does the Welsh Senedd get covered on BBC radio or BBC television in the news every day?
There is, there's some talk really about the way the media is operating as well, in that it sort of promotes and promulgates sort of a political bent, a slant. So you might see, tomorrow in the newspapers, very much, all the photos of Mark Drakeford and Labour and all this kind of thing. They don't seem to paint it with an even brush, and especially when it comes down to local politics and local coverage. Somebody was saying, you for them to come to Llanelli, there has to be somebody with an axe in their back, smoking crack and drunk out of their minds with some kind of weird outfit on. They're just not interested. They want to take the low-hanging fruit. These aren't my comments. These are coming from some people within the industry and people who've left the industry who are now disillusioned with the grip that the big players have on the Welsh media. The ICNN and Public Interest News Foundation are doing some great work in the background, really, where they are saying also that these days of news being a white man, middle class, educated, these days are gone. We need to hear. Communities are made up of very diverse mixture of people, and we need to hear those voices. We need to see them being represented. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but the biggest thing by far by now is an understanding that the future of news in Wales is online and local. And you build up a system whereby you cover the local news in a given number of areas, what Wales News Online is doing, 5 regions. The regions of the Senedd makes perfect sense to me. And it's something that the Senedd needs to address, because it needs to have the news of what happens in Wales, what happens in the Senedd, the decisions they take, the decisions of the committees, the activities of the committees of the Senedd. It's got to get a voice. It's got to get an airing. It's got to get a delivery. And therefore, that is why a Welsh media base, along broadly the lines I mentioned, is the way ahead. Okay. Otherwise, you see, our media in Wales is totally different to Scotland. In Scotland, they don't really have the Sun and the Express and the Mail and all that. Those are not their dominant papers. There's far more Scottish content to the Scottish news. Now, that is what we've got to approach in Wales and bring it down to as local a level as possible.
Oh, okay. It's coming up to, it's 24 minutes past 3. I think we should be getting some far more results in shortly as some of the counts conclude. So stick with us. A bit of music now, and we'll be back shortly discussing some of those key seats at the Senedd Elections 2021. Welcome back. Well, we're here, the Senedd Elections 2021, and it's not clear-cut for any party. I mean, it's all up for grabs. There are so many seats across Wales that are sort of, 50-50 on the fence, whatever you want to call it. They're all, a lot of precarious seats across Wales. So with me in the studio is Gwynnoro Jones, and he is going to just tell us roughly where those seats are and how he sees them going. Gwynnoro.
Well, yes. There's something like 25 seats that are more or less dead cert, whether Tory or Labour, they're written for. But there's about 15 that are in the interesting category. But only about 10, say, that are were highly marginal. Llanelli, only 300 odd. Aberconwy, only 700 majority. the Vale of Clwyd, and we've already referred, there's a recount going on, and that implies to me that the Tories could well be capturing that from Labour. Then Wrexham, of course, one of the red wall seats. Cardiff Central, Cardiff West, the Vale of Glamorgan, which is highly targeted by the Tories. Blaenau Gwent and Caerphilly and the Gower. Those are the 10 seats that if there are going to be changes, it's going to be in those. But having said that, we have just been reporting earlier that there are noises coming out of the Rhondda that Leanne could be in difficulty. Now, you know that in the Rhondda, she had a majority of about 3,500. So therefore, there are movements going on in Wales. The Tories obviously making gains in some of those areas that we expected them to, and Labour making a comeback in some of its more traditional areas, which makes it very intriguing what might happen in Llanelli now. You know, is Lee Waters going to make an inroad back, or will Helen Mary hang on? It's all to play for, I think. It just emphasises this election is so hard to predict because we don't know how many people postal voted, what's the turnout, what was the impact of COVID, and the fact that the Mark Drakeford had such a lot of publicity over the year and by common acceptance did quite well. You know, there are a lot of things in the boiling pot that makes this election totally different to many in the past.
I'm just sort of scouting through the BBC site here, just trying to see if there's any indication of any more coming in. You mentioned the Gower there, Rebecca Evans, obviously, up against the Conservative there. Do you think she's visible enough? I mean, and looking, we mentioned North Wales. We mentioned the fact that you said that Plaid Cymru didn't really want to discuss the issue, but Wales is changing. Wales is now made up of far more incomers, far more different nationalities, and predominantly English people coming in to live and work in Wales, which is, that's all to be welcomed. The makeup of the society in Wales has changed dramatically. How much is that going to influence in these kind of areas where these people are coming to, where they're setting up their lives, and they've come with obviously entrenched political beliefs, but they're now in a new political arena, aren't they?
Well, yes, of course. I've been on about this for ages, and few are paying attention to it, opinion poll-wise, although Professor Richard Wynne-Jones is one that does, and one or two others, and in this context. Roughly speaking, 25% of the people living in Wales were born in England. Now, that is not saying that anybody, and I'm certainly not, because my 3 children live in England and they're married to English people, so I'm not anti-English in that sense whatsoever. But what I'm saying is, because of that percentage, of course, it affects our politics. It affects our culture and society. And in my lifetime, I'm nearer 80 than 70, let's put it that way. Of course, Wales has changed dramatically. And Gwynalf Williams wrote a book, didn't he? When Was Wales? I could well see a day, 20, 30 years from now, when that will be a reality. When was Wales? When was that Welsh Wales? Because it's suffering. But oddly enough, the politicians are not paying any attention to it whatsoever. Not paying any attention to it. But that's the situation. There are some constituencies in Wales, with 40 to 50% of the people were not born in Wales. Now, that's a huge percentage. Hence, look what happened with UKIP in 2016. UKIP had no base in Wales. It wasn't a Welsh party. It was a party that was imposed on Wales by Farage. And they did very well. And they won 6, 7 seats. That is the nature of Welsh politics. And there are areas in Wales along the North Wales border, then down the west, you're talking of Meirionydd, Cardiganshire, Pembrokeshire, the Vale of Glamorgan, Monmouth, where the predominance of non-Welsh-born people is pretty significant in the makeup of the demography of the country. And yes, in my judgment, it has an impact on the political spectrum in Wales as well.
We could be going down the route, looking at Gwynoro's forecast here of certainly parts of Wales turning blue in the next decade anyway. We'll be back with Gwynoro shortly, and we've got Dave Herford, who's also arrived in the studio, to give us his wisdom and wit and tell us where he's been. I know he's been out and about, a roving reporter around Llanelli, taking some pics and speaking to people.
20 years ago, I come into this life, the son of a woman and a man who lived in strife. He was tired of being poor, and he wasn't into selling door to door, and he worked like the devil to be more. A different kind of poverty now upsets me so. Night after sleepless night, I walk the floor and I want to know, why am I so alone? Where is my woman? Can I bring her home? Have I driven her away? Is she gone? Morning comes the sunrise and I'm driven to my bed. I see that it is empty and there's devils in my head. I embrace the many-colored beast. I grow weary of the torment. Can there be no peace? And I find myself just wishing that my life would simply cease.
Cornelius Brothers and Sister Rose, too late to turn back now. And it is too late. You've cast your vote. You're going to get what you get, whoever you voted for. The Senedd Elections 2021. You decide. And today the votes are being counted. We should find out quite soon who will represent us at the Welsh Parliament. With me in the studio is Radio B Gem's Dave Herford. He's been out and about. He's been speaking to some of those politicians. He's been speaking to some people, predominantly in Llanelli. Welcome to the studio, Dave.
Thanks, Alan. Nice to be with you. And yes, it's been quite an exciting couple of days, hasn't it?
So just give us a picture of what's been going on in Llanelli. Who have you been speaking to?
Well, I've spoken to a couple of people, obviously lots of local people who have been busy casting their votes. As you would expect, many who have always voted Labour, and this time they said that they were not making any change to the way that they voted, and they were going to stick with tradition and vote Labour. So no surprise there. Quite a few people decided that they wanted to still remain true to vote in Labour. I spoke to Lee Waters yesterday, the Labour candidate, and he wasn't going to be drawn on whether he was, whether he felt that he was going to be re-elected. He felt that it was too tight to be able to make any kind of comment on it. Although he was quite, I suppose, concerned, if is that the best way, that obviously there was a real threat from Plaid Cymru, that they could actually take the seat from him. I mean, I think he's acutely aware of that fact. And I think many Llanelli people also see the fact that Llanelli has always been, in recent years, tightly fought between Labour and Plaid. And I think more so now than it's ever been.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a tight seat. So we've been listening to Gwynoro as well, giving us his expertise and certainly focusing on some of those marginals. And we're hearing whispers about, Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood, possibility of her losing a seat in the Rhondda. And some of this can be put down to the popularity of Mark Drakeford and his handling of the pandemic. Other issues, maybe, the issue of independence. Some people saying Plaid Cymru, Adam Price hasn't been bold enough in his statements regarding independence. He's sort of, hedging his bets, really. So, just looking at the kind of makeup of the Senedd, we could be seeing a coalition. It's way, way, way too early. We've only just got a small proportion of the results in. But there could be a coalition. What kind of things, if you were in Plaid Cymru's seat, Dave, and you were able to do a deal with them, with Labour, what kind of things would you be asking for as part of that deal?
That's a difficult question, really. I suppose that there'd be some kind of common ground would need to exist between the two parties, really, for it to work. We've seen coalitions that have happened before, and to be honest with you, they've never really been very successful. So I think if a coalition was to exist, it would be a very, very difficult one between Plaid and Labour. And I wouldn't like to say exactly how things would work out there. They've got very different ideas, because obviously Plaid are really pushing ahead with this idea of independence for Wales. And that's not something which the Labour Party are really putting at the top of their priority list at the moment. We're not saying that they can completely discount it, but it's certainly not high on their priority list. As with Adam Price, it seems to be one thing which every interview that people have been doing with Adam seems to be on the agenda. And I think that's what has really been the thing which has stuck in people's minds about Plaid Cymru is the fact that Adam has made this declaration that they are really putting independence for Wales right at the top of their agenda.
Well, people voted up until late evening yesterday, and it certainly will be a night to remember.
Hello, good to be on. Good to be on the line.
It's quite a strange, your battle, really, if you like, for your seat there, and Jane Dodds for the regional. Either one of you is going to be disappointed, aren't you?
Well, I mean, it looks unlikely at this time from the figures that are coming through that we'll have a double win. The Conservatives, I understand, are majorly confident of seizing Brecon and Radnorshire. That's just the word they're feeding out to members of the media team. But until there's a fuller picture from the verification process is underway at the moment. I'm on my way I'm actually on my way up to the count now, so I'm not speaking with the authority of having seen stuff myself, but the verification process is underway, and I'm sure my colleagues are acquiring a sort of picture overall as to where our vote stands in respect of the principal challenger, who obviously is the Conservative candidate in Brecon and Radnorshire. But Brecon and Radnorshire is a very diverse constituency. I know Lady Megan Lloyd-George used to refer to Carmarthenshire as more of a continent than a county, but I'm not sure she'd spend much time in Brecon and Radnorshire, because when you go from Knighton and Prestine all the way down to Ystrad Gunlais, from Rhayader down to Crickhowell, it's an incredibly diverse set of communities, loads of microclimates, and so there's loads of issues at play, and also some of the smaller parties have got very significant candidates also, so it'll be very interesting to see the impact of particularly the Green Party candidate, who is a well-placed county councillor. Also, the Abolish candidate who was elected as a Conservative county councillor in the heart of Radnorshire. So it'll be very interesting to see the extent to which any of those personal issues, as well as, I suppose, the personal issues around the two main contenders, actually play out in practice.
Politicians are quite an unusual breed, and you have come back into it because you left politics and you've come back into it. What made you come back? Was it the fact you had COVID and you were so well looked after and you wanted to sort of make amends and sort of do something about that for key workers, the NHS?
Well, Alan, now just to sort of clarify that a bit, I didn't leave politics in the sense that because I was a member of the Powell County Council in my days as a regional member of what was then the Assembly, and I retained my seat in 2017 and have continued to be active at County Council level in County Hall for the Liberal Democrats as one of our team on Powell County Council. But post-COVID, you're absolutely right. It's actually a year to the day, Alan, that my wife and son collected me from Neville Hall Hospital, Abergavenny, after 6 weeks in ICU. So when I hear people talking about an existential challenge for the Lib Dems, I mean, I understand the term, and it's quite an emotive term, but actually I've seen an existential challenge, and it's something a bit more than today, to be honest. But yes, my commitment's very much to seek to be, or at least to be ready to put something back in terms of healthcare and a range of other issues now that I've been given that extension, so to speak, after the fairly full-on COVID challenge of 2020.
We've got a former Welsh Liberal Democrat, well, a Lib Dem anyway, in the studio with us, and he's been monitoring events and looking at the political spectrum and seeing what's been going on. A very sort of well-informed analyst and observer, Gwynnoro Jones. I'm sure he's got a question.
Gwynnoro!
G'day. Well,
Shwmai, Gwynnoro.
Shwmai Gyfaill, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks.
You sound well. Yes.
Well, the colour may be draining from my cheeks in a couple of hours, but
I hope not. I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be neutral on this show today, mind, but everybody knows I'm still a Welsh Lib Dem, although not active anymore. And I'll be sorry if you lose, but let's see what happens. It's been an odd election, hasn't it? You know, the canvassing would have been difficult. The meeting the people would have been difficult. Do you think that hampered the Welsh Liberal Democrats in Wales?
Sorry, Alan, is that a question to me or to Gwynnoro?
No.
Yes,
to
me.
Hey, hang on a minute, Bill. You don't make me sound like Alan Evans, for God's sake. Now, listen. No, what I was asking was, did you find the campaign, because of COVID and everything else and the restrictions, a difficult one to conduct?
Oh, very, very much so. I mean, it wasn't even legal to canvass until the 12th of April, and we were entirely restricted to telephones and any online activity up to then. My Conservative opposite number decided to launch his state board campaign on Good Friday, which in the old-fashioned communities of Brecon and Radnor was frowned upon in some circles, not particularly by me, but it was frowned upon by a lot of people. We didn't start our state board campaign until the 12th of April as well, and we've built steadily from a very low base up to a situation where I think we're recognised as having matched and possibly outposted the main opposition. But it was very, very difficult, and in the last 2.5 weeks we've had so much quality engagement on the doorsteps, but it's been little more than touching the surface, you know. And I think, Alan, Gwynnoro, it's actually disproportionately harsh for, say, the Liberal Democrats, because we've always relied on engaging with people. We have no safe seats. That's obvious. We always need to engage and renew that connection with the voters. And obviously, we only had about 3 weeks to do so. And we didn't have the war chest of resource to be sending lavish mailings and hoovering up postal voters back in the winter with reply paid envelopes and all of the perfectly legitimate but activity, but they weren't available to us because we don't have that sort of scale of institutional monies coming from big business or indeed the trade unions, you know.
And of course, distributing those famous focus leaflets, Bill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is something quite unique within the Welsh Lib Dems, the focus.
Yeah, absolutely right. The old focus team.
That's right. You see all that. But tell me one thing that has intrigued me for a while: the farming vote. I find it difficult that the farming vote will vote Tory after the experience of the last year on after Brexit. You know, the Brexit is not working out well for the farmers, is it?
Well, I think there's a short-term view and a long-term view. At the moment, I don't know whether you've been alert to the livestock prices. The livestock prices have actually been at an almost all-time high.
Really?
Yes.
Well, is that because of shortage or what?
Well, I think it's related to COVID and people cooking more at home. Also to do with various things around the recently Ramadan and related festivals. There's a combination of reasons for that. I mean, I think a lot of the more thoughtful farmers are very alert to the danger faced by, in terms of the next crop of lambs that have been born in the last 2 to 3 months, as to how stable the trading situation will be.
So the commodity prices are going up, are they?
Well, the price, the lamb and beef prices have been very high at the moment.
Right.
And there's a lot. I mean, I've seen only a limited amount of the farming vote that is showing any sign of what I think is termed regret from Brexit. I think that there are some that are aware of the longer term dangers.
Yeah.
And obviously, the departure of the single farm payment. Yeah. And the fact that the whole debate around farm funding has been opened up and enabled as a result of Brexit means that in the long term, that debate, which doesn't really suit the farmers because it's very difficult for farm finance to win out in a battle when you're talking about schools, hospitals, and other things.
Well, anyway, William, best of luck to you, my friend.
William, I think it'll be time for me to, one way or another, win or lose, I'll need to catch up with Winoro Gindur-Jones to draw on some of your wisdom. And I hope to link up as well, Alan, with yourself and colleagues in the near future.
Before you go, I just have one question for you. I mean, we've spoken to Neil Hamilton, we've spoken to Neil McAvoy, both Neil's, no coincidence, but they've resigned to their fate almost, that they're not going to be in the Senedd, and they're left really, in the wilderness. Should the same happen to the Welsh Lib Dems? I mean, what is your plan? Where do you see the battlefield now? Where do you see the fight being taken, should you not get a seat?
Well, I mean, to be honest, both Neil and Neil, I know them both, secured their seats in 2016. So I'm in a different place in the sense that I've been continuing my county council service and a range of other things that I'm involved in. So it's my aim to continue and develop that work. From the party's point of view, the major opportunity, because this election's come too soon in more than one sense, the major opportunity is to extend our county council base, and we've got really strong groups around Wales, and particularly the group of which I'm part, the Powell Lib Dem Green Group, Ceredigion, and we've got other notable individual councillors such as Bob Kilmister, the finance portfolio holder in the cabinet in Pembrokeshire. We've also got really talented younger group of councillors in Cardiff and a resurgent group in Swansea and elsewhere. So I see May 22 as being the major opportunity and challenge for us to build from the bottom up, which is where I think Winora would agree we've always had to lay our foundations.
That's great. William Powell, thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Diolch yn fawr am y gwahoddiad. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.
Your local radio station.
We are Senedd Talk Radio.